Okay, Randy Green here, section 2, podcast 2 of Knowing Does Not Automatically Lead to Change. And I think that's going to be the headline. So what can we do? And this is again where you need to understand the scientific method as well as working with energy, as well as working with consciousness, as well as doing the activation process and the awakening process. Understand the reality field you're part of, the dynamics of the world you're part of, how that interacts with us, and how we learn to work in alignment with the energies, the original energies of our system, which will then create a positive feedback loop that will amplify us and give us more energy and align us with what we call the original dynamics of the density 1 outer domain. And that's part of the Pillar Project. And that's what I have tried to activate and recreate in the whole academy, where I'm going in and working with the understanding, okay, we got a lot of people out there that are activating. What do they need to learn? Because if they're activating and are still using the sciences of the base program, they will just align with the base program again. They will never lift their brain capacity into the 6 structural layers that will lead them to be able to work with the 6 layers of the vibrational energy system. You have 6 different ways of working with information that vibrates on different holographic units that amplifies your energy system in a specific way. That's part of the progression sciences, where I teach that and give you the ideas of this is how you need to do. Of course, I can't force you to do the energy work. I can't make you, just because you study it does not change it for you. But you get the understanding of what you need to do. So the next step of after studying, after researching, after getting the information is to then say, okay, what am I going to use that information for? How can I use that information? How can I implement that information so it actually leads to change? And the first step is, of course, as you have studied and you work with yourself, you have changed the narrative of who and what you think you are and what you feel you're capable of. You have changed your diet, you're exercising, you are getting less depressed, you're getting more energy, or some days you're completely worn out because of the energies of the sun or what have you, as I talk about in the challenges in new reality field, because the shift of the sun is going to have a huge impact on the molecular state. And I put a little bit of... There's a newsletter in the C forum where I actually, in the host newsletter, where I talk about the last stages of the sun that will end on January 1st, 2023. And then those of us who have prepared, those of us who are energetically ready to do that transition, we will do the transition into the original outer domain features, or some of you will be put to New Earth or what have you. That's happening there. And that will then determine how you perceive reality and how you want to change reality and what section of this world that you are going to work with and how you're going to work with that. That's the relative reality dynamics that will then kick in, because that's part of the holographic density worlds. You have relative reality. What you are, what your energy system is, will put you into that sector where you energetically belong, where you consciously belong. So if you don't have any viable genetics, you will be part of the 4th cycle fallen timelines. That's just the law. So these are part of the laws as well, understanding that, the laws of the cycles, the laws of energetic and genetic affinity, the laws of segregation. Because once you understand these dynamics, not only as you have learned the laws of protons and neutrons and electrons and chemical processes, you then understand, okay, we got double awareness. You got the electrochemical processes. You have got the frequency-based program that people are living under, the enclosure. And you also have the double awareness with the holographic density sciences, vibrational radiation sciences, where you understand how your vibrational field vibrates energy up, amplifies it so it reveals its content. You have developed a 6-layer energy system so you can process that information in different ways and forms, and you create a pattern of change in your own energy system, which then ignites the radiation field and the true purpose of your mind field, which is the perception field, from where you can begin to work with the information systems of other realities, and then pull that in, vibrate that up, and rebuild your entire energy system from where your true consciousness potentials can then begin to unfold. Because the true consciousness potentials cannot unfold unless you have an energy system that can carry these potentials. So this is also when we go in and people say, oh, I want to have a temporary reading. Please tell me what I am. I say, what's the point? You haven't got activated the energy system to utilize it. So what's the point? Do the progression sciences instead. Learn how to develop your energy system so you can activate your own consciousness potentials. Either way, I will only read the first layers, and that will be the regress genetics. And all of you got the same composition, more or less, because that's part of the base program. So you have got parts insectoid, you've got parts avian, got parts reptoid, you have got parts mammal. That's part of your human DNA, the ATCG. So what's the point? Figure out a way to deal with it. Begin to do something that will teach you these sciences and take the hard road. Take the responsibility for who and what you are really seriously. Not just plant vegetarian doing exercise. That's the base step. So you have a fit body that can work with the higher order levels of energies. Now, the challenges really come in when you begin to do the clearing work, where you will discover, fuck, this is so much more difficult than I thought. But that process of both learning to change your diet and learning to do exercise on a regular basis, and I would recommend up to 1 hour a day in what we call zone 2, where you can actually still talk when you're exercising, but you do some kind of physical activity 1 hour a day, whether it's a walk or a run or on a bicycle or you're dancing or you're swimming or whatever you're doing, or you're doing fitness or whatever you're doing, all depending on what kind of body structure you have, will determine what kind of exercise that's good for you. But the point is that this physical vessel is engineered to work. So you need to utilize it somehow. You can't just sit on your butt all day and then expect yourself to be healthy. Your body will go into entropy. So exercise is a way to create order. It's also a way to keep certain types of energetic parasites outside of your energy system, so they won't fall into your energy system. They will not get a grip of you and give you all sorts of desire cravings or chemical sugar kind of deprived needs to do stupid stuff that these energetic parasites of the distortion fields are growing in numbers because of the scavengers and how they are utilizing the collective fields of our reality field now that the top hierarchy are gone and nobody's really overlooking this reality field. So part of that change-making process is also to go in and say, yeah, our world is fucked. Someone needs to step up now and really begin to do the true reality governance. And that's part of the new reality programs, even though the last version of the enhanced humans failed, as they all of the others, but they did their go and now they are pulled out and discover, it's not the time. We'll resume in 100 years or so, and then we'll have more technological skill sets to work with, because humanity is clearly not ready to lift up to the new ways of existing. And why is that? Because we have got a lot of counter forces, a lot of old types of souls, a lot of types of what we call energy systems and templates that were dumped here, encapsulated here, and they're activating along with the rest of us. So this is going to be a very complex awakening process where things is not just, oh yeah, we all awaken, we ascend. No, we are all awakening and discovering all of the different types of energy system that actually exist in this sector and how far out things have gone in this sector, how many wars, how many shitty decisions, colonization, overtaking, the counter forces, the third cycle races, the fallen fourth cycle races, etc., the regressed, the diverted, the inverted, the blah, 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 go on and on and on and on, as you'll learn when you deal with humans. There are many different types of humans. As I said, you can't project who you are onto others and think they are like you. Nobody is. Everybody is unique. Everybody is who what they are because they're a special energy system with that specific composition, unless you are just holding the physical energy systems as part of what we call the low-level type of engineering. There are people that are that. I typically call them the clones, but they also have an individual setting. They have traits that are similar, and we have different groups that are similar due to their genetic composition. And their brains work in specific ways that can't be seen as similar, but we are not similar. And we will see that as we get further into the density 1 activation processes of these different types of energy systems of an older variety, because they will come to life now. And we're seeing that. And that's kind of when we can say the populist is kind of far right, returning to some kind of illogical ways where you kind of say, well, are we returning to the Middle Ages or what? Where you kind of think, what is that about? How is that even possible in 22nd century? Seriously, and we're not in the 22nd, 21st century. How's that even possible? Well, I'm already in the 22nd, right? Relative reality, you could always blame it on that, right? Anyway, so how's that even possible? How is that? And now, as I resumed when I talked about Greta in a podcast on the C forum, was this kind of where you had a company that actually made a sticker where a man was raping a 15-year-old girl from behind, holding her braids clearly, and then wrote Greta on the sticker. And it's kind of that was a company. I forgot the name of that one. I saw it on Wikipedia because I was looking up how long did it take Greta to cross the Atlantic. From England to America. It took her 2 weeks, and I just kind of, fuck, I'm happy that wasn't me. I would have gone completely claustrophobic. So good for her. And it was a bit of an ordeal, but she did it because she wanted to make a standpoint. That's kind of how her brain works. When she locks onto something, she follows through. And that's part of the children that's supposed to make a change. When they lock onto something, they follow it to the end. I have the same feature. I'm not in that manner, but I work in the same way. When I begin something, I work my way to the end of it until that sequence has been completed. So that's being locked into a sequence where you have to unfold and unzip the code system that you have been locked into. So you unfold all the potentials of it. And by that, you're upgrading your energy system to develop that new learning process that you have embarked on when you entered that code stream. So that's part of the holographic energy system. And that's what some of these youngsters, we will see that begin very young. They have photographic memory. They're already scientifically oriented. They're already ready to embark on complex solution systems as they grow and learn more and more. Some of them will they will burn out, and they will kind of gap over too much, as we say it in Danish. They will try they will embark on more than they can actually chew on, so to speak. So that is, so that's the challenge for these. And that is the challenge for us as change makers as well, because if you do normal social entrepreneurs and you do Coursera.org and you go in and you look at some of the solutions and some of the others that have been working, they burn out because they don't understand how difficult it is to change the world. They don't understand the resistance. They come in with a good idea and they think, of course, everybody wants to do this. With that sticker, as in kind of what company in their right minds, the name is on Wikipedia. You can look it up there, Greta Thunberg crossing the Atlantic, and look up in Wikipedia. You get the name there. And they made that sticker, and it's kind of put out there. Yeah, they apologized, and then that was okay. That's not okay. That just shows this jackass mentality that we are still kind of, yeah, that's kind of okay. Yeah, they kind of, what? There should be a hammer beating on that one. So unacceptable. So we're still living in a society where that is allowed. And I'm always baffled. You can hear me when I talk about the first time in that podcast, where I talk about using scientific method in psychic energetic processes, as well as can we really read a mythology as a literal information system telling us this is how it works? Can we really trust what's been given there? What's the agenda behind that? Drawing a little bit on what we call the Copenhagen interpretation, which is the bachelor degree I took at the Copenhagen University in theology. So we're just going in there. There are things going on out there. This is whole kind of 50% of the human population are having vaginas, whatever their inner human is, but they are having vaginas and they suffer from it because the human population with vaginas have been suppressed for so long that it has become a seriously bad habit. And we have had a world that has been run by humans with penises and whatever they are inside. But they have run it, and they have run it in a way that has now run it to the brink of destruction, because males, due to the third cycle energies and due to the way that they are thinking in terms of spatial features and technology, and they have this high level of testosterone that makes them more willing to take risks, not always taking the responsibility, not always using their frontal lobes, but are often more in the limbic instinctual level, just running with the adrenal glands and the adrenaline and the kick of, yeah, let me do that chance, and yeah, I'm ready to go in and do that, whatever. Jackass mentality has led this world to the brink of complete collapse. So that's also challenges that we have, in females need to rise to the occasion and get some balls. Seriously. So we're having these kind of, and when I say women, I talk all of these half population with vaginas and the other half with penises. And then we have the one in between that both have vaginas and penises. So it gets very complex. So let's get beyond this whole kind of just whatever we will come up with. It's good and fine. Whatever narrative we create around ourselves is an expression of our soul potentials and eventually. And that is how it should be, whatever form we're in. Recognizing the fact that we are all in this imprisonment suit or this enslavement suit, all depending on how you got here. And we have to deal with that. And we have to deal with the molecular vessel that we are part of. And how do we deal with the 3 lower fields? How do we change them? Because now the sun is doing and initiating that process for us. And either we follow with that push as well as the planetary remaking into density 1, because we're made of the same type of material. So it doesn't really matter if we have this or that or whatever, the outer features of this physical form. Eventually, our physical form, if things go the right way and the complete collapse of the pillars that upholds the enclosure, if they've completely melt down and no longer exist, our energy system will then bleed through this molecular vessel that is upheld by these technologies. If these technologies cease to exist, well, then everything will collapse around us, including the world we know of, and we will see the true reality field that's beneath. That was some of the dreams I had as a kid. And that is in that context, you have to see the hybrid projects, whatever's going on. They're trying to create some kind of cross-link between the enclosure and their version of the new future that they want to create here using their technologies and their developmental programs. And that's why the new reality programs that I put on the C forum, you can find them there. They are on the HAL Academy website, but I'm changing that one into working with the higher order psychic energetic method, the HOPE method, where we begin to use our activation potentials in what we could call scientific methods, where we begin to use that as they were supposed to, as we learned it in the Pillar Project. And then that all lead to the implementation of the Changemaker material, which I'm dealing with here. But in the C forum, there you will work with the reality settings, the rules of engagement, the other races. I barely begun that one, so I've just built the skeleton for it now. I just got the structure up, and then I'll begin to put in more material. And that's why it's a work in progress as I write on the front page. Similarly, as the HAL Academy has been a work in progress, because this is what we make. We make processed products. We work with energy. We transform ourselves that change our energy system, that changes our perception field, that changes our energetic expression. And by that, what we are part of, we will change as well. So therefore, when we work with the higher order technologies, or we're working with the higher order sciences, which is where I have my faculties and my speciality, that's where I am good. Again, pointing, should I go out and be environmentalist? I'll return to that one in 2 seconds. But for me, where I have my core strength is that psychology and science and implementation processes and transformational processes. I got a process memory. I got my brain work in processes. It does not work linearly, as you've heard me say many times. So that's my skill set. And what can I then utilize that for to instigate change in the world that we're part of? Changing the way people think. Step 1. A lot of other people have done that too. So where can I come in and add in that is my special feature where I can put into that what everybody else has been doing? What can I add into that pattern so we then progress a little bit further? So we push our way of thinking a little bit further. That's part of the HAL Academy, pushing you to a new line of thought, pushing you to new thought processes, pushing you to work with energy in a new way. And then also, of course, providing this is the energy system as we were supposed to have in the Pillar Project after the timeline event. And this is what this physical form is built upon. So as the sun resumed to its density 1 original outpost configuration, and our body begins to do that. Those of us who have built the original transformative energy system, we will just transform energy. We will burn it off. Our energy system will naturally absorb the density 1 energies, transform them, and build them into that higher order structure that they have to be according to the consciousness potentials we have, because we have learned to activate that. We are in the 5th cycle where our radiation perception minefield has been activated. So we know how to deal with information, complex information systems. We also need to adapt to it. We learn how to adapt to it. We make changes in our home. So at some point, some days the sun are not in our favor because it's then linked up to the dark fields, and then it will radiate dark light instead of what we could call density 1 bright light in a blue golden frequency spectrum. Instead, it will really seriously radiate dark light, especially when there have been coronal holes and we have solar storms that are giving geomagnetic storms. And science will tell you, oh yeah, that doesn't affect humans. It does. If you activate your high order energy system, it does. It ripples in, and these days are tough when the density level of the sun, the solar storms are high and affecting the geomagnetic field. That's where we really, these days I am hiding away, actually wishing I had a bunker, but I do have the opportunities. I actually have my kitchen that has a wall, so I don't get the sun there, and it's faced towards north. And I technically also have my bathroom that is completely lodged into the ground or the soil, where I can go. It's chilled, it's cool. Last summer I was there for hours a day because it was just too hot in the rest of my apartment, and I don't use air condition. So this kind of goes with that one. And I got a south side to my house all the time, so it's enormously hot. I got a little tiny house, a shared house that are connected to other houses as a kind of in rows, as you've seen it in England as well. Anyways, so just put that in. So we will arrange ourselves. We will find ways to prep for this. We will prepare for whatever is coming. It's not just a matter of, okay, I'm storing a lot of food or what have you. Some of you will be able to do that. Others that are living the way I am, I have no garden. It makes no sense for me to store a lot. I am beginning to think about, okay, how can I actually store certain things? But we are having issues with, as I said, the sun is changing, so that changed the molecular state of everything. So that also means that the food we are storing will quicker go into deterioration. It will not last to the same degree as it used to, even though we're taking all precautions. So that should also be thought in as in okay, what can we store? How are we going to store certain things? What should they be in? They should probably be in cans. They should be in something that rejects radiation or something like that. So these are also the next step of the prepping processes. But since I live in Denmark and there are certain institutions that are very focused on taking care of humans, we are run by what we call a social democratic government, and we have got 200 years of democracy. We have lived for a long time supporting the weakest and taking care of the weakest. We have made an infrastructure that is taking care of what we call an advanced society and onward and so forth. So I'm not seeing the whole kind of food supply chain breakdown as a feature that's going to be very high in Denmark, because we're also paying a very high tax to ensure that everybody gets what they need from the government. So we are having a very broad social network that is typical Scandinavian. So I'm just prepping for 1 week at a time. So I have food in my fridge and in my home, so to speak, for 1 week at a time. And that's good, because then I just get my groceries delivered once a week, and I don't have to do this constant going to the mall or whatever and getting out amongst people and what have you, because I'm becoming too sensitive for that. So it all comes down to, interestingly enough, years ago I talked to one of these very prominent spiritual leaders within the Danish community of spirituality, who actually lived in America for many years, and she returned to Denmark where she wanted to grow old. And She told me how she had arranged herself in this loft where she both had a room for exercise, and she had all of these features that I am now sliding slowly into. And I remember thinking, that's interesting. She rarely went outdoor because she was so sensitive. And it's not because she suffered from anxiety or OCD or whatever label you want to put on it. You will discover what I'm talking about once you get to that point yourself. So that's also part of the progression where I talk about, well, eventually, as you grow in, your inner human gets more and more prominently through the physical form, and it bleeds through and it gets integrated into your current type of vessel. You will discover that the world is so far from what you think it is, and other people are not what you believe they are. That's part of the double awareness. And you will then shift into the higher order understanding of things, where you really begin to work with the higher types of energies of our system, and that will then transform your molecular state, which makes you enormously sensitive to a lot of different types of energies that other people are not sensing. Again, relative reality. And with that, it just becomes, also most of us that are in that state, we are up in older age. But technically, I had it when I was a kid as well. I just didn't know what it was. This being nauseous and dizzy, and when I was around other people, I could almost get sick. I could get skin rashes by other people's energy. Yeah, I have had all sorts of weird effects, and I didn't understand why. But more of you out there, you will discover that you get a headache when you're with that person. You feel completely drained with you. When you're that person, you get stomach ache, you get bloated, you get gas, you want to burp. All these kind of things you will discover. That's because that person has some really nasty, distorted energy that is influencing your physicality, creating specific electrochemical reactions, which will then make you feel very uncomfortable. Because that's energy interfering with energy. And that's going to be much more common. So we will also have people that are getting ready to either withdraw into nature or are finding ways, because I prefer not to get into nature. I don't, from the way I am and what I experienced in Australia, as well as when I'm out in nature here, it goes, nature is for me just as hostile as being amongst people. So I'm trying the in-between, very close to nature, a lot of nature around me, but also a little bit of humans, because there are this, when we talk about the night crawlers and some of the creatures that are ruling nature, because nature is ruled by different groups of colonizers and creatures and what have you, and underworld stuff. So it's not just, oh yeah, nature is a good thing. No, it's got its own challenges. But when you live in what we call communities where human lives, that's kind of the segregation laws and segregation dynamics. What is in nature belongs to nature. What is in human communities belongs to human communities. We knew that in the Middle Ages and in the olden days, in where you had the city walls, and you had the guards that were walking the city walls, and you had the light on the city walls, and then the rest could go to sleep, not just because of human invaders, but also from animals and, of course, spirits and all sorts of things that were part of nature, which all indigenous people will tell you. There are certain sections within nature they won't put their foot in, because that's where you got some really nasty mojo, really nasty energy. And you will know that. That's where the genes reside or whatever. Once you get your sensitivity back, you will understand this world is a very complex world with a lot of different energies and a lot of different entities and a lot of different layers and a lot of different races and a lot of different creatures. We're just one part of that. And that was also taught in the context, just to put that in context as well. So we have had other systems. You have the old Hindu systems that are talking about the 7 layers of the underworld. You have the netherworlds of the Sumerian mythology, and you have that in Egyptian mythology as well. And all of these levels are part of the older sections of the civilizations that used to be on our planet. As when we die and decompose and go into the ground, we will be part of that layer of our planetary. In the future, if those who doesn't dissolve their energy system float around the distortion planes, they will then create havoc for the future races. And some of the souls that are now in physical form that don't belong here and by that get stuck here in different pocket realities, they will also create a huge amount of trouble in the future, which are some of the reasons why the future humanities have returned, because this is the crucial time where we could have turned it around, but unfortunately it appears we are repeating the same stupid history, because the first time around they didn't know about these pocket realities and remains of earlier civilizations and the impact and the timeline event. Now they do, but they don't have the sciences for it, because in that process, those of us who actually had the sciences and were part of the Pillar Project and the restoration program, the rehabilitation programs, we were taken out or exiled or pushed away or whatever, because they thought, yeah, we got that under control. We just put up these technologies and these pillars, and then they will keep it all at bay, and we'll keep it outside our system, emitting a type of fourth dimensional artificial reality that will push that away and push the density one energies with all of these earlier imprints of earlier civilizations under control. And we'll re-engineer the sun to hold density two energies, so we connect to the middle domain of the colonizing races. Good. All of that is collapsing now. And now we're waking up to that reality as in kind of, oh yeah, this is the world as it actually is. And nobody's been maintaining it. Nobody's been taking care of it. Nobody has been clearing their energy fields. They've been living in these artificial density 2 constructions, connected to an artificial fourth dimension, maintained by different forms of grace and programs and prohibiting technologies and blah, 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 blah. And all of that is collapsing. So again, just putting that in context, that's part of being a change maker, realizing the difficulties in the challenges that we have ahead of us. So that's where that's where the very emotional, we kind of go, yeah, doing the 3 monkeys and blah, 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 blah. I'm not seeing that and hearing that, doing that. I don't want to know about it. I'm in complete denial because it's overwhelming. It's doomsday. I can't deal with it. It's just, where's the brown bag? So you can, but this is what you're going to say. Come on. This is what it is. You need to look at the troll, say the name of the troll, and you know the troll will just diminish into being a little chicken or whatever, because all of your ideas of what it is and all the danger that is around it is what you are blowing out of proportions because you don't know what it is. So your fear system kicks in. And then you go into denial because it's too overwhelming. And that's a psychological feature you need to deal with so you can see things as they truly are. Because if you want to solve a problem, you need to understand what the problem is. You can't just do your version of the problem and paint it pink and give it lipstick on. A turd is still a turd no matter how much frosting you put on it. It's still a piece of shit, even though it has a nice surface. So let us stop doing that and get the frosting away and saying, this is not a cupcake. This is a piece of shit. This is a turd. Let's work with it. What is it made of? What is the composition? Why is it there? Why is it on the floor? Who put it there? Let's work with as it is instead of trying to put a furniture on top of it and pretend it's not there or put it under the carpet or whatever. It does not work. It smells, it stinks, it's decomposing. We need to deal with it. We need to get rid of it. So that's the approach the whole Changemaker has. That's what we are maturing into. That's the responsibility we take onto ourselves. Facing the difficulties, doing the Dalai Lama exercise where we in meditation look at all of the horrors of the world, literally, and then learn to sit in silent compassion and carry that burden of what that is so that we don't bend under the weight of the trouble and the issues and the challenges we have ahead of us, but that we learn to take one step at a time. How do you, again, I have different analogies, and you can say, how do you get an elephant out of the room? You can ask, how did it get into the room to begin with? Right. Well, it's easy. You just put fourth dimension to it as the Greys are doing. Then you can vibrate it out the walls. That would be an easy way, right? Using alien technology. But you can also kind of say, okay, we can break down a wall, then it can walk out. So that's another solution. But how do you get the elephant to walk out if it doesn't trust you? It doesn't want to work with you. It's not interested in leaving because it's cozy. It's lying there. This is a good place for me to be. Not that it is. It needs water and all these kind of things. Then you can begin feeding it, thinking, okay, I'll have to keep it alive. Or you can let it die and then you can remove it when it's dead. What is the solution? All depends on their psychological structure, what you kind of feel most inclined in doing. And I would say kind of feeding the elephant and trying to keep it in your home is probably not the right solution. That's kind of trying to avoid the difficult solution. So the solution is either to break down the wall, use alien technology, or let it die or kill it, and then literally chop it up and get it out. And that's messy and that's nasty and that's kind of solution we don't really want to go, because we like to be kind to the animals or whatever's in them, and elephants are not particularly what we could say infused with all sorts of nasty stuff. But it's an example that proves a point. So we have two versions: break down the wall and then rebuild the house, or use alien technology. These are the two options we have. That is kind of within what we could say the progression rule set. And I have chosen the option of trying to deal with the alien groups. And that has led into a lot of trouble for me. That really taught me, yeah, they're probably not so interested in working with us. They work in mysterious ways. Their mindset and the way they operate are so dissimilar to the way we work. And then there is this trying to be as they are, learning what they are dealing with. And that's been part of my process, to learn to think like them, not to become them, but to understand what we're dealing with. And in that, I actually activated older levels of my energy system, where I then reconnected to the original memories. And then I got it as an infusion, as in kind of, oh yeah, I remember you. I know what group you are, where you belong to, where you come from, what you're made of, what your agenda is, and what your regression rate is, and what your trouble is, and how you acted during the timeline event and after, and what you actually should be jailed for, because all of your fucking ways are so illegal within all progressive systems. And how do I know that? Because I remember how we used to be as progressive humans. So that's part of the activation process, where you then in the beginning work with the principles to reactivate that original justice system that is in your energy system. So you know what's right and what's wrong, because you have reactivated the original layers of your energy system. Or you discover you have a completely fucked up energy system, and then you have to recreate it using the principles to do so, where you train it again until it becomes a new habit of your energy system, similar to changing your diet and changing your exercise habits. And that's part of being a change maker as well. Seeing things as they are, being able to do the changes, implement the changes, change our energy system, and then begin to see things as they are and find solutions. That's the most important step as change makers. Whatever we're dealing with, whatever we have studied, whatever we have embarked on, also understanding the trickery, the manipulation, the enormous amount of information that's been given out there, which we could say 80% is bullshit. That's not how the different races that are here are. What I have read in the early days and what I have encountered are two completely different things. It's like making a caricature, what do you call it in English? Some kind of made up version of this is how a gray is and what have you, or this is what that is, or whatever. And they rarely are. So there are a few out there that actually have made some quite accurate things. But then there is the whole bunch that are just studying what others have made, and then they come up with their own versions, and then they tap into different programs of what we could call cube information systems that are put there to feed people with all sorts of not so correct alien agenda, extraterrestrial sciences, extraterrestrial races, so that they will never get close to the true deal. It's all about derailing people from actually accessing what we're dealing with, and for a good reason. Because to be able to deal with these races, you need to have a completely new skill set. And that's part of the change makers as well. And that's also why I created the C forum, where I'm working with that in the years to come, as in kind of, okay, in the whole academy, I'm teaching you how to use your higher order capacities and deal with the higher order sciences and learn to build your energy system so you can enter into the fifth cycle. Thumbs up, become change maker. Let's begin to put that into reality, change it according to the original rules and laws and principles of the system and what we're supposed to do and what the original civilizations used to do in the outer domain, and not upholding this weird artificial reality we call our world and all of the different things that are in it, and understand all of the complexity and all the complexity processes of the world, the different civilizations, the different cultures, the different psychology features, although they are very similar, they're also very dissimilar. The understanding we have a bulk of humans that want to do good, let's say 80%, we have 20% that are so screwed up and so fucked up that literally what are we going to do with them? How are we going to to find a way to deal with these soul groups that are now coming to life and activating as well, and are putting in politicians as well as CEOs and business leaders and military leaders and what have you, that are working for devastation, that are working for destruction, that are working to break down everything that's going on, and not in a positive way, that are creating dictatorships as we're seeing it in Russia, and China's now resuming to their old ways, and how North Korea and all of these things, these cricket beings, dark ones, whatever they are, resuming to their third cycle warring processes and ways of controlling their realities in all sorts of suppressing methods that are taking away any form of personal freedom. And we're seeing, as we saw it 100 years ago and during the stages, the pre-stages of the Second World War, we're seeing the same dynamics that happen in Italy, that happen in Spain. And we are having some kind of revival of that because the souls are back. What they did back then, they're trying to do again. We're seeing it all over the globe. How these souls that 100 years ago led the world into world wars are now activating and are still on that path because that's the only thing they know. So how do we become that counterforce, the change makers, transforming these energies, taking down the cubes that are upholding the programs that allows these souls to do what they do? How do we transform reality? And that was what the new reality programs were a part of, trying to transform these cube programs and these reality programs that allows these souls to actively have a role and a part and an impact on this world. And that, of course, has failed due to the link up to the dark galactic core and the old gate systems that opened and the rising of the underworld forces and blah, 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 and what have you, and all these kind of things. So that didn't work. That was premature. They should have put it in years ago. But there we had the event program under the gray. So we had these different energies and the laws of the cycles that play in, that allow certain groups to come and play at certain point in time, and then they have their time and they will complete their cycle, and they either lift themselves up to a high potential rate or they will diminish and begin their devastation cycle. So this is the process of a system that is closing down, and that's the transition as well, where all these groups will have their last chance to do what they need to do, and if they don't, they will blossom, and then they will wither away, and then hopefully will be done with them. But all of these processes will give a blow to our reality field in all sorts of ways. So it will be damaged each time this surge happens and it's not purged. It damages our reality field. So that's also part of those of us who are doing the change makers. Not just about what we see physically in the outer environment. It is just as much the understanding of how to work with our reality and how to transform it back into the regional density energies, knowing that that will change the world that we are part of. And that will change it dramatically. Dramatically. It will dramatically, that became one word there. It will change it. And we should be prepared for that as change makers. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't come in and play. I tried 10 years ago, but it was premature. Now you have all of these things that are going on, and that creates an enormous amount of panic or denial, or people just kind of go into fear mode and hide in the corner and pretend it doesn't exist, because that's the way of responding. Then there are the rest of us that are kind of pushed to the forefront and saying, oh yeah, now we need to do something. Now we can see there actually is something to work with, and now we need to come up with the bright solutions. And that's what I want to do here on the Changemaker channel. I'm not going to give you all the bright solutions. I will work with different processes. I will work with the general ideas of this is how you work with complex information systems. I already made the basics in the progression sciences, so you need to do them to understand what I'm talking about. You have the psychological features in the 4 courses of the Changemaker skill set courses. So you got that there. I don't need to touch ground with that. I'll take for granted that if you're in for this, you'll do these courses. You'll get that background information there. And then here out on the free material, I want to seed in what we could call new types of solutions that are based upon alien technology, but are also in the understanding that that technology is deteriorating and falling apart. But behind that is an original type of solar system density 1 outpost, outer domain type of technology that belonged to the original Pillar project. And that is connected to consciousness. So those of us who are becoming whole change makers, we need to activate our consciousness potentials to be able to operate these technologies. Because the world is falling apart, not just because of the souls that are here and our perverted ways and our distortion energies and the falling artificial fourth dimension and the collapsing fifth dimension and being pulled into the abyss and the connection to the dark galactic core and the sun that is shifting back into its original configuration. It is just as much because of the technologies that creates this reality are not being maintained and upheld by the original civilizations that used to exist here, because it was connected to our energy fields. And that is why we got taken over. That's why we got chopped up and put into all sorts of weird bodies. That's why we got exiled, because that was the way they could take over this reality field and transform the original, sorry about that, the original outer domain technology. So it fit their configuration and their density 2 middle domain reality configurations and architectures. So that's part of the colonization as well. And that's also a process of accepting that that's the fact. Instead of focusing on all sorts of mythology and weird stories and making humans into whatever. Yes, we have this enslavement body, but it's actually not to mine the planet. Well, it kind of is energetically, but it's so much more than that, which I've seen with the different groups of races I've been working with, whether it's in Australia or the ones in England or the ones in America or the ones in India or the ones in Indonesia or the ones on Bali or the ones in China or the ones in wherever they are on the planet. Each and one of them have their own project that goes with the original colonies that used to be here prior to the timeline event and after the timeline event. And some of these original colonies that were progressive humans because they were working in a progressive systems, they changed because of the timeline event, and they reverted and they resumed their old ways because their genetics were hit by the timeline event. I talk about that both in the Perception Logs, the Souls of Humanity book, as well as in the Transition Science courses. So it's all there. I put it into the course material. If you want to know the answers, do the classes. You'll get your answers there as a proper education in this reality field, in what you are, in what the genetics are, what the purpose are of the genetics, what the sciences are behind all of this, what your energy system was supposed to be, how you work with your energy system, how you upgrade your vibrational field, how you upgrade your mental field into becoming the perception field, and onward and so forth. It all comes down to the sciences of how to work with who and what you are. And what I have to offer is enormously dissimilar from anything else out there. And that's why when you have to go through all of the courses, it's a step-up building process. And there's a lot of free material on my website as well, aside from the whole Academy channel, where I'll do some free lectures at some point with things I find interesting to dabble a little bit with. As you've seen there, as my take on Buddhism and these kind of things, where I close down old belief system and say, yeah, this is what the purpose was. They are outdated from my perspective, of course. And then there is the Systemic Energetic, the whole Systemic Energetic Awareness Forum, which is also a YouTube channel, where I already put out some videos there or podcasts there already. But this is not the traditional approach to the extraterrestrials. Whatever that will lead to will just as much be in alignment with what I am permitted to do. But since many of the races I am talking about are no longer here, or just their technologies, I'm just dealing with the prohibiting technologies and not actual races that are coming in and messing my energy system up, which has been some of the issues I've been dealing with ever since I went to Australia and I got aligned with the colonies of Australia and the experimentations that were done in Australia. And then I got back up here in the north, and that was a clash between jurisdictions, and that led to some very unfortunate side effects for me and the different groups of races that I got entangled with in Australia, which were of the nasty kind, because there's some really shit races in Australia, because that's the low point, so to speak, of the Southern Hemisphere. Okay, so aside with groups of Indonesia and Bali and all of that peninsula, that whole going from Australia to India to Australia, Indonesia, India, going up to Korea, Vietnam, China, Russia, that whole banana there is kind of all moon. I know the half moon is somewhere else, but that they are under specific species and specific groups of aliens that are doing specific experimentation on the human genome to be able to continue their existence here, because the density 1 energy is actually their original type of reality. So they want us to return there, but they want to us return there in what we could say a very transhuman, mechanically technocratic oriented way, where the organic vessels are used for specific types of work and put into specific type of hierarchies, which you're seeing in China and Russia and all these kind of things. It's there anyways, but of course it's not the same way in Australia right now, but you have forces there. Australia is looking more and more to Japan, looking more and more to India, looking more and more to China. Of course, they are perhaps not so happy about the whole Chinese situation right now, so that will probably change. But those of you who live in these parts of the world, you will understand what I'm talking about, because you're feeling it, you're sensing it. And that's a clash as well, because you are supposed to live in what we call a civilized civilization that is imbued with what we call Western ideas. And then you have all of these weird things going on that are so dissimilar under the surface that has nothing to do with that, similar to some of the things we're seeing that's going on in America as well. And that's also part of the awakening process, to understand it's not just about the powers that be, but there are actually more to the equation. And that's part of the awakening process, to get into that level where you truly understand that this is not just about benevolent races that are here to save our sorry asses, but probably more likely the complete opposite. And that's just the story they told us so they could continue their affairs here until they were done and pulled out and just left everything to collapse and go into the devastation cycles. So that's also part of the problem of our environmental crisis and the pollution and the whole overpopulation and everything that's going on our planet, are the different groups that have been here, been there, done what they needed to do, overused, overabused, over-harvested, doing all sorts of stuff that has left our reality field in a more dire state. And now we are having the pocket realities coming to life with the density 1 energies. And that's also going to poke holes in our reality field. So we are in what we call a Swiss cheese reality configuration now. So that's also part of being a change maker. So all of that listed, the tools how to deal with these very difficult challenges are in the Changemaker courses, the 4-1 with the skill sets. I will work continuously, of course, to come up with toolkits as well as examples of, okay, the toolkits will probably be something you will have to invest in and buy. But here on this channel, my idea is that I have on the HAL Changemaker project news and updates Google site, which is my test site where I put in a little idea seeded into the virtual reality shared space of the different groups that are here. I will take some of the ideas I have there. I got some very technological solutions that are actually based upon alien technology, and I just put it out there as if it's something for humans to figure out. But it is a new type of science that we need to learn, and that I could take into some podcast here where I would work my way through. That's the intention. Let's see when the time is ready for me to do so. I'm getting ready to do it. I'm thinking about it. I'm creating the pattern of change and thought systems, the complex information systems behind. And then I will create podcasts where I will go through in a sequel or a sequence of information to say, okay, we have that challenge. How could we work with it already, combining the sciences that are already in play? For instance, the desalination of seawater, the desalination of seawater, which the UAE are already doing to irrigate their dry areas. They're already using seawater. They have removed the salt within. It's already in use other places on the planet. It's just up here in the Western world. We haven't figured it out yet, as well as the weather modification, which is also something that is getting in play in lots of places, especially now when we have the weather systems where we'll have areas on our planet that will not have any rainfall whatsoever. How are they going to solve that? Cloud seeding, which we know has been used since the 40s, or are they going to desalinate seawater? And that's the solution I come up with. So that's also some of the processes we can go through where we think through these processes. And then there is, of course, the implementation process and put it into effect. And that's where we kind of say, is that going to do by policymakers, or is it going to be done by private contractors, or is it going to be done by states that have the financial systems for it? Will they be the first of many to do that, and then they implement it, and then the rest of the world will follow because one has gone first, and one's with finances and funds, as the UAE, for instance, and all of these kind of things, inviting scientists to come and work with them because they are funding this, they have the finances for it. The Western world doesn't have it. We are focused on other stuff, as such as medical solutions or longevity solutions or whatever. Each and one of us have our own area of expertise. And the whole idea is that we learn to work together. That's the strength in numbers. But we need new skill sets. We need new psychological structures. We need new approaches to reality, approaches to ourselves, approaches to others, and approaches to sciences, and approaches to how we solve this. All the toolkits and the ways we've been doing so far has clearly not worked. So we are in that process of, we need to change. And that's part of the whole Changemakers as well. And then we need to pioneer. And that's where I'm going to say, all of you that awakened, all of you that have the high order potentials, all of you that have clairvoyant abilities, all of you that have psychic abilities, you need to educate yourself, and you are going to be the forefront of the ones that will lead to the changes that we need. Being psychic does not mean it's just about talking with the dead. That's just the distortion layers. You need to progress further than that. It's not just about talking to guides and angels. Most of these are programs and overlays or falling angelics stuck in some version of the fourth cycle, the artificial fourth dimension. You need to get beyond that as well. You need to get to the skill set of the original systemic civilizations that used to be part of our quadrant. There we will find the solutions, because that type of consciousness is capable of working with reality constructions and reality technologies and reality developmental programs. These ideas you get in the reality programs, the new reality programs, which you can find on the randygreen.one, where I there offer it for free. You have to create a Vimeo account, but you will then get access to the information there, because I'm not going to have that out there floating around for everybody to link up to and share here and there, because there are personal information in these as well, as I go through the different processes of dealing with the new reality program leading to their collapse and the abandonment of the enhanced humans at the end of the process. Okay, so, but with everything, we can learn a lot, because we need to learn a lot. And whatever we can embark on that will create the opposition, that will generate the synergy effect of our energy system, from where we can lift out of the lower fields into the higher order fields and the higher order understanding of reality. We'll work with it. We'll deal with it. We'll find solutions to it. And that's also part of the Changemaker. Thank you.